You could take it outside. No, just kidding, gentlemen. We need you here. We need you to come up and give a talk. So with that, let me welcome you all to the Energy and Environment Committee. I'm Councilmember Jose Huizar. I'm joined by Councilmember Dennis Zine. And before we go on, I do want to ask that we, item number 4, take on consent. That's the Cal Recycle grant. If that's okay with my colleague.
Yes.
And item number 2, I want to continue that for the next meeting. That's the DWP Keep It Moving. I had several questions on that, and I want to just get a fuller understanding of what that program is all about. If there is any last-minute urgent reasons why we need it right away, I need to be made aware of. And you could probably tell Martin here on the sidebar. Otherwise, we're going to continue that for a week. I just need some more information on that. So, item number 1.
Item number 1, good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Rafael Operator with the CLA's office. Number 1 relates to the DWP report relative to the status of the 2012-2013 power and water rate proposal, rate components, and infrastructure planning, as well as it's also incorporated with the budget, which they approved May 24th.
Thank you. And this is, we had a session almost a month ago already with status report on the DWP's forthcoming rate proposal. In this and following committee meetings, we want to look more closely at the key rate components and infrastructure plans that are driving the DWP's revenue needs, and I have asked the Department of Water and Power to share with us today 2 areas of great interest. First is the state of cost controls that have been instituted at DWP. This was clearly a priority directive from the council and the mayor to the general manager when he was brought on board just a year and a half ago. And second, staffing plans. The infrastructure investments that have been outlined to us in the previous meetings are significant. A major undertaking to replace or refurbish 70% of the power supplies and to meet the demand for clean and reliable water supplies amid much competition for water. We'd like to better understand what staffing needs we foresee to achieve these goals with a proposed rate increase. So with that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Nichols and again welcome you and state for the record that we've been joined by Mr. Koretz. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have with me also Phil Leiber, our Chief Financial Officer, and Phil will start this out, and we'll work back on and forth on a few of these matters.
Council members, so one of the challenges the utility faces in the years ahead are the need to comply with a number of state and federal mandates and address an aging infrastructure, and that's going to come at a cost. We'd love to be able to do that work within our existing rates, but unfortunately, despite all of our efforts to squeeze and economize where we can, we're going to need some incremental rates to do that. And of course, that will present a challenge to our customers because we recognize raising rates is always difficult. So we're going to do our best to try to implement these programs while keeping rates as affordable and competitive with our neighboring utilities as we can. But that's going to be the fundamental challenge that we face in the years ahead. And as I mentioned, we've done what we can to review the operations of the utility and to find efficiencies and trim where we can. And we've had a good deal of success at that over the course of the past year that Mr. Nichols will talk about.
Mr. Chair and committee members, you noted that when Council confirmed me a year and a half ago that one of the items that we discussed at that time was the concern about overall costs, maintaining costs, recognizing where we are right now, in particular with the economy and the difficulty of rate increases. We knew that these regulatory mandates and some of the infrastructure requirements that we have were facing us. And one of the first things that I did in the first 90 days that I was on board was to work with the department, both the water and the power side, as well as our joint support services, to come up with a long-term plan. We came up with a goal over 3 years to save almost $460 million. And we have done better than expected in our first fiscal year, in the fiscal year 11-12. We had a plan of getting about 157 million of that 459 million. We're actually beat that by more than $39 million. We had saved over about $196 million total. And it's in these general areas that you see on this chart in front of you in terms of non-labor operations. Those are things such as management take-home vehicles, eliminating those, cutting back just a lot of different areas, cutting back phones. So we had to rebid the health care. We cut back on travel. We put aside and canceled a number of our outside contracting services. We cut back on the number of computers that we did away with office remodels. We cut back on furnishings, or just a number of things. These are the types of things that we had to cut back on the non-labor area, and our labor and overtime savings. We get 400 or 500 people a year retiring or leaving the department. We have not backfilled a lot of those positions, and we've gone through and cut back significantly. We'll have a little bit more discussion on that Phil will give you in a moment. And then in the capital area, we canceled real estate purchases. We refinanced debt to save our debt costs. We looked at our major vehicle purchase programs and cut those back. And this is a few of the items that we've done. All in, we've cut back just short of $200 million this year. We expect about another $122 million of savings in this year that we're just ending up right now, and we expect to meet or beat that, knowing that we have these other costs going forward, and we needed to cut back and get as lean as we can before we dealt with some of these other requirements that we're moving forward to address. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to, unless you have some questions on those areas, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lyber to talk about our staffing, which is a significant portion of those cuts, and an issue that we need to deal with now as we go forward to deal with some of these other programmatic requirements.
Okay, so in terms of the staffing, as Mr. Nichols alluded to, we're not in a position where we're simply taking our existing operations and adding costs on top of them. We're reviewing our operations, trimming where we can, and only then adding the programmatic needs that we face. And that has been particularly true in the staffing area. What this chart shows is how our staffing levels have changed over the course of the past 2 years. Going into the 2011 fiscal year, we had a funded staffing level of just over 9,600 positions, and our occupancy was shown in the red line, and that was below that. When Mr. Nichols came, he implemented the cost reduction plan that was effective in April, and you'll see that we dropped the funded staffing level down to 9185, but we continued to keep our belt tightened and allowed the occupancy level to continue to decline throughout the year, so that at present we're at about 8,900 positions. Now you will see that going into the next fiscal year, we are going to need to increase the staffing level, but the key point we'd make here is we're not adding the new requirements on top of where we were at previously. We're going to be adding the new requirements based on the lower staffing that we're at today. So we have tightened our belt, and only then very programmatically selected the number of positions that would be required to meet these mandates that we face. So over the course of the next year, we do anticipate adding about 496 staff to the current level, and those are staff necessary to implement programs both in the power system and the water system. And in terms of the power system, we've talked to the community and we've talked to our board and all of you about the programs that are driving these needs. And it's really three main areas. In the power system, we have to address replacing our power supply. So over the years ahead, replacing over 70% of our existing power plants. And specifically, that's rebuilding the local power plants, getting to the 33% renewable energy mandate. And while it won't affect the next 2 years, thereafter we're going to have to begin the transition away from our use of coal. So about 8% of the staffing that we're proposing would be in that area of the power supply replacement. That's about 23 positions. In the next area of the power reliability program, that's the largest number of staff, about 59% of the total increase, is related to replacing the aging infrastructure. We just simply don't have enough people to tackle the work that's in front of us here. We've talked about the number of trouble tickets that we have to address. That has been going up each year. Despite our best efforts, things are just breaking faster than we can deploy our crews to fix them. So we have to make some additional investments here in order to maintain reliability. The next program is the Customer Opportunity Programs. The big story here is we're offering additional ways for customers to take control of their bills. One of the key programs there is the Energy Efficiency Program. We're more than doubling our investment in that area, from about $55 million of spending this year to $127 million next year. And contractors will be involved in that, but that's also going to require, in addition to DWP staff. So in total, about 54 people are going to be needed for that program. And we're also ramping up the solar program, adding the feed-in tariff. Over the next 2 years, we're going to hope to achieve 150 megawatts of local solar, which will be a great benefit to our customers and the utility because it will count towards the 33% renewable mandate. And then finally, there are some supporting requirements. Customer service, we're implementing a new customer service system. That will allow us to go to monthly billing, which will be a benefit to a lot of our customers, allow them to better manage their budgets. So we need some incremental staff there, about 25 staff in total. And then operating support, just all of the people who support the programs that are mentioned here, about 8% of the total. This is the pie chart of where the entire budget at DWP is spent. And one of the observations that's important to keep in mind when we talk about staff is staff costs are not the primary driver of the DWP budget. It's only about a quarter of the budget that's related to staff. That's in the top 3 slices here. The other observation I'd make here is when we look at our cost control program that Mr. Nichols mentioned, a lot of these areas we really don't have much control over in the short term. Our purchase power, that's defined by contracts and market prices. There's not a lot we can do there. The fuel costs, those will be what they will be. Those are based on the market. We can't really exercise any discretion to influence those in the short term. Depreciation and debt service, that's just paying back borrowing costs for investments that have been made in the past. So that's about 18% of the total. It's really this slice over here that we have any control over in the short term. So that's where we've had to focus our cost control efforts. So of the $459 million in spending reductions that were contemplated over the next 3 years, about 61% was related to the staffing area. So we've done everything we can to control discretionary overtime and keep positions open as long as we can. So we're asking our staff who work hard to even do more, and we try to improve the efficiency where we can. So that's, again, where the dollars are going in the power side. In the water side, we have a similar transformation underway. We want to enhance our local water supply program to reduce our reliance on more expensive and potentially unavailable imported water sources. So we have 4 key programs there: recycled water, stormwater capture, customer conservation, and groundwater cleanup and management. It's about 9% of our total staffing increases in that area, about 23 positions. The next major program is safe drinking water. That's largely complying with regulatory mandates, covering reservoirs, changing how the water is treated from chlorine to chloramine, and replacing some of the major trunk lines that help us move water from the reservoirs to the local distribution areas. So that's about 37% of the total. And then just like on the power side, it's essential we address the aging infrastructure. Unless we want to open the newspaper each day and see major main breakages, which we don't like to deal with, nor do our customers. So that's the largest component here of about 43% of the total. And then just like on the power side, we have some other costs that have to be dealt with and programs that have to be dealt with. So we have regulatory compliance needs in Owens Valley. As we've mentioned before, we have many phases of work that have to be done in dust control there, and that requires staff to administer those programs. And then again on the water side, just like the power side, staff costs are even a smaller component here. They're only about 22% of the total water system budget, so not a major driver. and infrastructure costs about 26% of the total. Purchase water costs from the Metropolitan Water District about a quarter, and everything else also just over a quarter. We also provided in the presentation additional detail about the cost reduction program. I won't get into all of this now, but it's the type of initiatives that Mr. Nichols made reference to, and we're going to be continuing all of these efforts in the years ahead. So there's not a single area that we're not going to continue to economize on where we can, both for the labor, non-labor, and capital savings.
With that, I'd be glad to turn over any questions you might have.
Sure. Any questions, Mr. Cardenas? And we've been joined by Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Koretz.
Thank you very much. One of the things I'd like to ask of the department in the future, when you're giving us the breakdown of the status of the department and the cost drivers and on the cost side and also on all of the other sides, whether it be demand side, whether it's what legislation has been imposed on the industry / and or directly to DWP. If you could start to give us a history, certainly without question, like the last rolling 10 years, every time you give us those kinds of presentations, because I think it's important for us to understand that I think that as having been a part of this committee for the last 10 years, I think that it's probably more external forces that have caused us to have to revisit the model at DWP and how we're going to address the present and future of DWP, whether it's staffing or demands on cost of water and how that's changing, or cost of fuel to run our plants. The new paradigm is that we want to go to self-producing consumers as well. Things of that nature. So I think that it's important that we allow the legislative members to understand, at least at that level, what the push and pull is on a department so important and so large. You get what I'm saying, Ron?
I do. That's a good point, and we'll provide that information.
Because, I have no doubt that all the information you gave us is accurate, but it seems to be a snapshot of what's going on real time, present day. But I think it's important for us to understand what's been going on, and also I think it's important for us to carefully let us know what seems to be brewing, whether it's strong activity such as an actual bill at the state legislative level, or whether it's at the federal level, regulation-wise, a decision that seems to be pending, whether it's 10 days from now, it appears, or whether it's a bill that seems to be sailing through the legislative process that may cost us additional responsibilities, those kinds of things. And I think that by doing that, it's going to be able to help you get past the political rhetoric when somebody tries to accuse the department of just being hypersensitive or making something up, right? Because this stuff is complicated. It is a unique aspect of what the city of Los Angeles does, being that it's a proprietary department and being that it happens to be the largest in the country, correct, right? Municipal water and power, we're the largest municipal water and power district in the country. And then probably another thing that makes it difficult is we're on the West Coast, and when you provide power on the East Coast, it's very different. And maybe someday, Mr. Chairman, we may want the department to actually, as succinctly as possible, either provide us with some information or do an actual presentation on what the dynamics are around the country. How lucky we are, perhaps in some instances, and how unfortunate it may seem on the burdens that we have just being geographically where we're at. Okay? Thank you for your presentation.
That's very helpful information. And we can compile a lot of that for you. I think you're right. Giving more of a continuum would be a good background to put things in context.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Koretz?
Yeah, first of all, a follow-up from council. As you know, I have a number of constituents who complained to me about the length of time it took not to install solar panels, but to get them approved by DWP. At that time, my list had waited over a month. We were told in council that it would take only a week or two. The list of constituents that I had then are all still waiting to have their solar panels turned on, and you had assured me that would be done almost immediately. Is this a staffing issue?
I'm unaware of there being a staffing issue with regard to this matter. We have had situations, and here's a circumstance that we encounter, unfortunately, too regularly, and an issue where you have a home or a business building owner, and they have their contractor dealing on things. Contractor's in contact with us on it. We have issues with regard to the contractor not doing things that are requested. We laid out very clearly to them. They don't take action on it. They don't communicate back to the owner, and the owner believes it's all DWP's issue. And the reason I bring this up is these issues are brought up to my attention personally from time to time. And I had this one just this last week where I had a very, very upset homeowner who called and said, this has taken X amount of time, and here's the problems with it. And, I was, to be honest with you, I was a bit upset by it. I thought, well, how could we be not responsive on this? And it kind of took our people to task on it, and they provided me with the list of everything that's been done. And we get a call, we go out there, here it is, this is the things, very clear things that you haven't complied with. We said up front, these are what the requirements are. These are either safety issues or permit-related issues, and come back, and we go back again to check it out, and once again, literally weeks and sometimes months go by, and the contractor has not done anything on these activities. I don't know, I can't sit here, council member, to tell you that that's the case in all the items, but I'm finding that to be a fairly consistent case, to the point where I've asked our people to say, let's make sure that we are emailing and sending written confirmation back to people instead of relying upon phone messages back and forth, because it's going to become a he said, she said sort of issue over time on that. I would, as I've indicated before, I would welcome getting names of people that are a problem or addresses that we can follow up on these things, and to make certain that it's not on our end.
Now, my understanding is that we've provided that, we've been in touch with your staff, and your staff just says we're working on it. But more than a month later, that just can't be acceptable. I have the same list that we had way back then, and it's now getting to be 2 or 3 months.
Well, we do have the list, and I will follow up on it once again. That's all I can tell you here today.
I appreciate that, and especially I know the success of this program is going to depend on customer service. I mean, if people hear from their friends that are looking at doing this, that this is a bad idea and it's a pain they have to deal with the city, and with the DWP, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I don't know, the extra funding we're providing for solar and for customer service, I presume that's to avoid these kinds of things happening in the future, among other things?
It is to we call that the intake process, in terms of dealing with applications coming in, dealing with the customers, and tracking where things are. And we are adding a few more people to be able to deal with what we anticipate as we ramp up the feed-in tariff, that we're going to have a higher volume that we need to deal with on that. And that is the intent, to take care of some of these issues.
I hope we're able to streamline this process so people don't keep having this problem.
I do as well, and I will look once again into the list that you've provided.
Now, on a couple different areas, what are we doing in terms of allocating staff for the transition from coal power to other sources? Are we adding staff and responsibilities yet, or are we waiting a few years and then saying, all right, we'll do it as we get closer?
So the coal transition, as I mentioned, is one of the very important elements of our power supply replacement program. The work for that is happening now, but the transition is going to happen in earnest by around 2015, when we've made a decision to get out of our Navajo generating plant. So we're not looking at much in the way of staff increases in next year's budget with regard to that, because a lot of that project is just in the planning phase right now. So not much of this 8%, if any, is related to that in this upcoming budget.
That said, I would like to make one point, and that is the transition out of coal isn't just getting out of coal. It's replacing it with other resources. And part of that replacement, no small part of that other replacement, is our renewable energy program. So the work that we're doing on soliciting for new power supplies, negotiating contracts, many contracts associated with this, tracking the projects getting online, dealing with transmission interconnection. There's just lots of different transactional things associated with doing that, getting out of one 477 megawatt coal plant, being our first one, the Navajo plant, is replacing these with a lot of different smaller facilities. We're already starting that process now. So we are adding a handful of people on providing additional support on all of those issues in terms of negotiations and contracts and interconnection and power supply agreements and the like.
How much of the replacement do you expect to be renewable, and how much more standard sources?
Well, it's about a third of it will be renewable energy. 30% of it roughly would be renewable energy, and then about on the order of 8% of that or so will be energy efficiency, and then the balance will be largely by a replacement of a much smaller, high-efficiency gas-fired power plant. Those are rough numbers from memory right now.
Anything we can do to raise the amount that's replaced by energy conservation? And
well, we're working on that. I mean, we're planning on doing more energy conservation than that over time. That ramps up, and as you're aware, our board has just taken a very active role to double the amount of energy efficiency that we're doing. That number that I said is about 8% incrementally going forward right now would have been significantly lower than that, but for our action by our board just to ramp that up further. And we are, in addition, we're undertaking about a year-long study that'll take to look a lot more deeply into our customers to see where can we do even more cost-effective energy efficiency, to see if we can ramp that number up even higher. And it is a pretty major study to get that done, and we'll be evaluating that.
And essentially the same question, but not relating to coal, on the water conservation side, what's a little more detail in terms of what kinds of water conservation programs we're looking at now?
The sources?
Yeah. We are, full-size copy.
I don't have.
Yeah. I don't have that information perfectly at hand right now. Our plans, and this is a longer scale. You know, we're not looking at being able to get this done by say the 2020 timeframe.
Right.
But right now, a little over half of our water in an average year, and that varies a lot, but in an average year, about a little over half of our water comes from Metropolitan Water District, from purchases that either come from Northern California or from the Colorado River. We are looking to cut that in half by local water supply. That's increasing. Our groundwater right now is on the order of about 10-11% of our total supply. We're looking to increase that by about 50%, so like about 17 to 18%, not quite 50%. We have recycled water. That's a relatively small piece right now that we're looking to grow that. It's about 1%. We're looking to grow that almost eightfold to 8%. Our conservation will be incrementally about another 9% above and beyond what we do today. So these are big areas that we're looking at. Our stormwater capture is about another 4 or 5% of that. It's a relatively small point right now. So all in, we're looking at about 43% increase in non-imported water from recaptured stormwater, recycled water, greater conservation, and cleaning up our groundwater aquifer in the San Fernando Valley so that we can not only use that groundwater to which we have a right, but also be able to capture stormwater, capture recycled water without it getting contaminated. Again, it's a very similar situation that we have on the power side. You go from today, we can go to MWD, literally write a check, buy water that has cost and has increasing cost each year. Today, we get our power, a lot of our power from coal. We replace the coal with a lot of different pieces of renewable energy and energy efficiency. We replace that MWD water with a lot of actions in those other slices that I just mentioned.
And on the purchase power side, what's that go to? Is it mostly long-term contracts, short-term contracts?
It's largely long-term. For example, we don't own the Intermountain Power Project, Utah coal project, and that is a power purchase agreement. So power purchase from that is that we buy in the market as well. We buy power for months at a time and then hourly at a time to fill in and around our other resources. But the vast majority of it is a long-term purchase.
So not much in the way of potential savings on that?
No, and the short-term savings is just items it's a function of the market, and that's largely impacted by the cost of natural gas and just the overall weather effects that affect the demand for power across California and the Southwest region.
And one last small question. I've gotten some emails from constituents who own second homes, and a high percentage of the area's second homes in Mammoth Lakes with concerns about litigation. Since we're essentially having the LA population versus LA sort of fighting each other, is there any better way to deal with this and get past this litigation?
Well, there is. It's a long discussion, but the long and short of it is Mammoth, the Mammoth Water District up there, Mammoth Creek Community Water District up there, has been using water for some time that is owned and the water rights which belong to the city of Los Angeles. And we've been talking with them about it for some time. The reason that you're seeing action now isn't because of something that we decided, let's go pick a fight. The issue is they developed a long-term water plan, and they had to adopt an environmental impact report to do that. Adopting that report gives you a window of time to comment and file any protests with respect to it. They filed it, and we have been talking to them for quite some time saying, you're using our water, you're not paying for our water. And now they developed a plan that, unlike us developing a plan to reduce our water demands, they don't have a plan that comes approaching the rigor of ours. And so they're planning on continuing to use more and more water. The reality of that is, that water that they're using is water that we now have to go, when I'm talking about trying to replace water, we would have to go buy more water from Metropolitan Water District because we would have less water that comes out of our water rights that comes out of the Owens Valley. We are happy to work out an arrangement with them by which they could pay for the water that they're taking. They enjoy a rate that is about half our water rates today. And even if they were paying for the water that they were taking out of there, their cost of water would be significantly lower for second homes, quite frankly, for generally more wealthy persons from Los Angeles, to a large part, and elsewhere, paying less for that water than our low-income people are paying for in their discounted water in Los Angeles. That's wrong. There is a resolution. We'll let them use the water. We can replace it elsewhere, but they need to pay for something. Just like I can't go, I don't believe that you would let me go use your house for free. I think that's sort of what
pennies on the day.
No, it is on the other hand just a trickle in essence compared to our total water needs. But I guess it's almost more on principle that.
Well, Councilmember, it really goes beyond principle. you go back to that slice of those different slices that we're talking about. There are things that we're doing 1% here, 0.5% there. I've just presented, we're presenting to our board at our next board meeting about 5 or 6 different water recycling projects that are millions of dollars that our customers, our ratepayers, are going to be funding, and the amount of water that they're taking out of there is larger than all of them combined. So it seems like a little, but it's a growing amount. Over time, they're basically saying, this is our future. Our future is to continue taking a growing amount of water out of that creek that belongs to the city of Los Angeles. We don't want to deprive them of their water. We're happy to work out an arrangement with them. We just believe that they should pay the cost of that water, and we will gladly work out an arrangement by which we could stretch that over time so there's no rate shock to them.
So are they being very difficult? I mean, it seems unusual that we wound up in litigation with them.
They have been unwilling to date to sit down to even acknowledge the fact that they have any obligation to pay for that water. And so it's just a fundamental property issue in that regard.
Gotcha.
Happy to discuss this more with you.
Okay.
Mr. Zine?
Well, I wasn't aware of the Mammoth situation. Are they charging the consumer for the water?
They are charging their consumer for their overall cost of operations. I don't know right now, as I sit here right now, how they break it down. I anticipate that they aren't charging more than their cost to take the water out, treat the water, and distribute, and pay their bills. I don't anticipate they're charging them for the actual water itself, because we're providing it to them for free.
Well, I would think,
blunt.
I would think that they're charging the consumer for the water. We should look into that and determine if, in fact, they are charging the consumer for that water, which seems logical, and the consumer paying that bill, and they're not giving us the money. I know we have a situation in the desert where we keep paying millions upon millions of dollars for some droughted area that we're held responsible for, and the courts have intervened. So, I mean, to me, every dollar counts, and the folks in Mammoth live a very environmentally conscious environment, safe, secure, and if the Mammoth, whatever water district they have, is providing water to the businesses, to the residents, the hotels, somebody's paying for that, and I'm sure the consumers are paying for it, and we're getting ripped off. So I don't know why we would sit around and wait instead of going after them, or turn it off and say, you know what, until you pay. This has probably been going on for a long time.
It has been, and we've been in discussions with them about it for a long time, and it finally came to a point where we've been trying to work through this. There hasn't been a pressing point on it. They put out this plan that gave a legal deadline by which you speak or forever hold your peace, and we spoke.
Yeah,
Because we don't believe it's appropriate to have the city of Los Angeles to subsidize Mammoth with water that LA citizens own.
And we own the rights to that.
We have the long-standing rights to that water, yes, sir.
Well, then I would request that we immediately pursue that and get the dollars maybe to defray some of the costs that the federal government and the state government mandates that we implement here in the city for our ratepayers. I just can't see the goodness of Los Angeles to say, Mammoth, you can use this water and we're not going to charge you. And I'm sure that the consumer, if we were to check, the homeowners, the condo dwellers, the businesses, I'm sure they're being billed for their water use. I just can't see it done without any kind of cost, other than the cost for them to distribute that. Yancey's got breaking news. What is the breaking news? You can speak. All right, well, some secret notes passed.
We'll,
No, that's, to me,
this is an important topic.
it's been going on probably before you got here.
Oh, it has, indeed.
So we need to like put a stop to it one way or another. They're either going to pay or they're not going to pay. But I just can't see us lingering around and waiting for a long period of time. Water's a precious act of nature, and I just don't know how consciously we can do that. So I'm not blaming you.
Right.
But somehow we need to put the brakes on it and say, this is what it's going to cost. We just don't give it away. I mean, nothing's for free.
We have brought the issue up, and
So we need to be more aggressive with it, Ron.
and pursuing that, and we're trying to find a workable solution because we recognize that the city, their city up there, you know, they have businesses and they need to get water delivered.
Yeah, but they got to pay for it. Nothing's for free.
And that is exactly.
Let me say this, let's just be cognizant of the fact that we are in litigation, and we should schedule some further discussion, if anything, regarding the litigation comes up. We could obviously talk about it in general terms, but if there's anything that has to do with litigation or posturing, then how are we going to deal with that case? We'll take that into closed session, and we'll schedule that for an update in future closed session agenda.
Okay. I mean, I find it unconscionable that we would do that. Solar and water, for the Valley folks, the second meter. We've talked about that for a long time, to get a second meter for those folks that have large parcels. We need to do some aggressive program with that, with the large parcels on the second meter, which the water goes into the vegetation. They don't get billed for the sewer and sanitation charge. We have not marketed that very successfully in a long time. And also with the solar panels, and what are you doing? And Mr. Koretz brought this up. I've got a consumer, a resident, that put on a solar panel with a legitimate contractor, and there was a dispute between Water and Power and Building and Safety. Both of them do inspections. Why can't we somehow combine that inspection instead of having two different departments go out and tell the consumer, yes, this is good, no, this is not good, bring your contractor back? I mean, it shows lack of efficiency when we do that. How do we bring that to a better understanding?
We've been working between building safety and ourselves on exactly those issues, and trying to get, number one, get our inspections more aligned in time. At the end of the day, we can't sign off on building standard issues, and they can't sign off on electric safety standard issues, and it's just a split that we're unaware of any way you can kind of unmix that problem.
But when you put a water heater in your house, you don't call the gas company out to check the gas and building safety to check if it's properly installed. I mean, there's got to be some way we can do something for the consumer, because it seems ridiculous that these contractors that are licensed, and there's a whole bunch of contractors out there advertising now, put solar in and minimal cost, rebates, thousands of dollars, and I'm sure more and more people are going to do it.
Right.
And it just seems that to be more efficient, somehow we need to come up with a plan that works. I know solar is relatively new with the installations, but we need to be a little more efficient with it and not have the consumer who's trying to be conscious and purchase this and go ringing around back and forth, then call the council office and say, you know, can you, city, get your folks together? You know, Water and Power is a city department, Building Safety is a city department, and it seems that one hand doesn't know what the other is doing. I don't know how large of a problem this is, but I know that I've received complaint on it, and there are probably many more, because those two folks can't get their, you know, and if we have a contractor that's not doing the job, then we need to do what we need to do. But we need to be more customer service oriented and not cause these people to go through the hassle. If they work, they have to take off from work, sit there and wait.
Right.
I mean, it's not the way we should be running the ship.
No, I don't disagree with you. I do believe that is very much the outlying situation, but they do occur, and we are working on trying to get better coordinated on those matters.
And the business retention and energy efficiency, are we doing anything to help, as we're talking about these 496 additional staff, which I've got concerned that great number, where they're going to come from, business retention and energy efficiency to help the business community, since many of them are struggling to pay the bills?
A major portion of the ramp-up that we're doing in the energy efficiency program is targeted at business. The number one savings that we can do for any of our customers is in commercial lighting, and that's the biggest ticket item for most businesses. So we are significantly increasing that program. We're also increasing our program to provide technical assistance, so we can go out to a business, help work with them on identifying where can they get some savings on that. We've had programs like that in the past, and frankly, in the past, we've had some of those programs, we haven't been able to get rate adjustments when we anticipated them, and when we had to cut back, we've kind of cut back on those programs. So our goal is, let's set a consistent year-over-year plan to get that done. So yes, I think you'll see that a significant portion of this increase in energy efficiency will indeed help businesses to be able to help save dollars, and that saves all of our customers money, because our programs are cheaper than going out and buying power. We can save power more cost effectively than going out and buying the power to serve them.
And as the automobile manufacturers keep pushing these electric cars, and you go from 110 to 220,
right,
to power that, the electrical costs are going to increase significantly, and people aren't aware of that.
Well, not necessarily, because we have right now, when we instituted it over a year ago now, it's a pilot program, but it hasn't been anything close to fully subscribed, where we will pay up to $2,000 for the cost of getting the charger, installing the charger, and then we also separately will provide a time of use meter for that charger, so we know exactly how much it's using, and we give a discount to that customer to the extent that they use off-peak power. They get a 2.5 cent per kilowatt hour discount for that charging for that. So we pay up to $2,000, which in most cases pays for all of that charger, including changing out to going from the 110 to the 220, and we put in the meter, and they get a discounted rate for doing that. So if they work through us on that, they're actually coming out ahead, and we want them to. We want to see more electric vehicles out there, and more importantly, we want to get the information back from them as to how much they use it, what time of day they're using it, and is that discount that we're offering the discount that's driving them to do it, pushing them to do off-peak charging rather than on-peak charging.
But we haven't seen that as great success yet?
It hasn't been, we just haven't had as many people taking us up on it as we thought there would, and generally, we talk a lot with the electric vehicle, with the
industry?
Car industry and sellers, and generally speaking, it's largely because there just isn't quite the interest level that we had all hoped for. So we're trying to push that forward.
They've installed 4 of those devices in the garage downstairs. Right. I don't know who's using them. They're just sitting there, but I guess they're anticipating in the future that we'll have some electric cars to plug in.
Well, there are, and one of the other things, one of the big issues, and this is a longer-term discussion than perhaps today could offer, but one of the issues is that you can provide home chargers. I think one of the things that's holding back people from buying more electric vehicles is just the anxiety about, well, I don't necessarily know where I can plug it in at work, and I don't know where there's enough public chargers. So we're working on trying to develop a plan for more public charging, so that we can all in have something that reduces that anxiety level of am I going to be able to recharge my electric vehicle?
And there will be a universal adapter, unlike they had in the past?
Yes.
Because everything had a different...
Right. Last thing you want to do is go up there and plug in and find out your cord doesn't fit, right? No, that issue, I think, is pretty well resolved.
And is the ratepayer advocate involved in any of these discussions?
Not at this juncture, no. It's a little early for that.
And then on your 496 staff from the current level, increase almost 500 additional employees at Department of Water and Power, where are those folks going to come from?
Well, they'll come from a significant number of those will be craft positions. So they'll come out of union halls. There'll be apprentice programs. Some of them are non-craft, and there'll be open competition opportunities for those.
Because one of the concerns that's happened in the past is when a job opportunity opening takes place at Water and Power,
right?
City employees in other departments find that the pay's better, right, the benefits are better, the pension's better, and then they flow in, and then we have a problem with those existing departments trying to get personnel. So I don't want to prevent anyone from moving on, but the fact is that's a lot of folks. And with ERIP that took place and the lack of personnel in many departments, and I can see how people would say, water and power is not a bad place. You must be the greatest general manager, or maybe just the history of your predecessors, because people like to go to water and power.
I don't think it has much to do with me.
I think you have something to do with it, with your leadership, but that's a consideration, because those departments then complain to us, different city entities that say, our people are flowing in. Like that. I don't want to prevent people from moving up the ladder, but at the same time, we need to do something, because the department loses personnel, they can't hire anyone, then we have another gap in trying to provide the service. So there's got to be some kind of balance in that with the, that's a lot of folks, almost 500. I mean, Yancy does a job of about 3 people. On a good day, she does a job of 5 people.
I would agree with that.
We would agree. And I want to say that we provide the water to the folks here at City Hall. I don't know where you get it from, but they package it in a water and power bottle.
We get it from the same place that you get it from your tap.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
And then we recycle the bottle for a nickel.
See, there you go. Money ahead, right?
That's it. Thank you. That's all I have.
I just have one final question, and we'll move on. You have shown some cost reduction goals. Are you going to go through this whole thing, or you finished on the?
We're done.
Yeah. On this handout, on the last page, you have some cost reduction goals for labor and overtime, yet we're hiring. So how do you reconcile those two?
The issue is what we've done is we've done cutting back and cutting out of areas where we can to make room for the added work that we're doing. So we're monitoring all of our existing personnel, all of our existing programs, and all of our overtime, and we'll continue doing that. And we'll continue to keep our overtime down. Had we not made these cuts that we're doing, we would have been adding these additional functions on top of the labor headcount that we did. We've basically just gotten more efficient at what we're doing today, and we'll continue that as we go forward.
Mostly overtime that you're seeing these reductions in?
No, we have cut back on overtime, but we've cut a significant headcount out of it, and some of those,
So is it mostly through attrition and?
Yeah, it's lack of backfilling. It's lack of backfilling people when they retire or otherwise leave the department. We go through, just to be clear, there is not a person that can get promoted or hired at the department without my personal approval. So we go through every single individual and make certain, is that a required position if someone's left and we're looking to backfill it? Is it someone that it's an absolute critical need that we need to backfill that position? Can we wait? If we do need to backfill it, can we wait for 6 months and get some additional savings on that? We're doing that position by position. Doesn't make me the most popular person at the department, to be honest with you. But that's what we've been doing, and that's what we will continue to do as we go forward.
Okay, we have one more question from Mr. Cardenas and then Mr. Zine, unless it was on that issue.
Well, it's on the personnel. It's on the personnel issue. If you're looking at 496 additional staff, can some of those be part-time? Some of those be another versus the full-time with all the benefits and all the costs and the city liability or responsibility? Is there another opportunity you have to maybe scale that back so it's not such an impact on the budget?
Those are full-time equivalents. In most cases, they are full-time positions. We do have, just to make sure we're clear, we do have on construction projects, for example, there'll be times when we hire someone for 6 months out of the union hall,
right,
on an exempt position to come in and fill. There's numbers of people that we do that. They come and they go out and they're done. So what we're doing is trying to maintain a staffing position and then use those exempt short-term positions around it so that we're only using what we need. If we had to scale up and have all the staff we needed to meet all of those short-term positions, it would be extraordinarily expensive. So we're already doing, I think, Mr. Councilmember, that's what you're suggesting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas?
Just a quick question, maybe a report back. if necessary. When it comes to energy efficiency, I know that we were participating quite a bit in offering the fluorescent light bulbs, replacement light bulbs.
CFL?
And then subsequent to that, I think to our horror, we realized that, oops, when they dispose of them, apparently there's some mercury in there. And obviously disposal isn't our direct responsibility. However, when it comes to water quality, that's definitely our responsibility and concern to try to mitigate that before anything happens. Now that LED lights seem to be more available today than in the past, and that seems to be a better alternative now than the fluorescent bulb, are we in a program where we're working with the LED replacement? And also, if we are we being careful to encourage and or require that if we give them a bulb, they got to give us the old one, whether it's the old-fashioned one, or certainly we want to make sure that we're handling the ones that have mercury in them, rather than people just tossing them in the trash.
Well, you raised a lot of important points there. Let me speak first to the
And my last point, last point on that is, and has the state or the federal government or any other agency, whether it be water quality or what have you, or have they come out with any grants or anything that we could utilize to help that endeavor, if at all? Go ahead.
On that last point, I'm unaware of them. I don't know, Jim. I'm not aware of any any grants that are associated with.
So we do it all in-house if we do it?
We do, but let's be clear, because that's an important point. If we go in and we replace, if we were to do a direct install, okay, and replace, so if we were going and doing a commercial building, for example, and we came in and did a direct install ourselves with our own forces, we're the ones that are taking out those old, and we're taking care of that, we're disposing of them in accordance with the proper hazardous materials. If a contractor is doing it, a contractor is supposed to do that. If it's just a person who's buying a CFL, or we've in the past, as you're probably aware, handed out for free, CFL's compact fluorescent lights, that was on the homeowner, to do the right thing. We can't really be in a situation where we're going to have someone go home and screw and unscrew their light bulb for them. I don't think that would be terribly cost effective. So there's different levels of responsibility. Where we're touching it, we're doing it, we're installing it, and we take that responsibility for that. Obviously, as I think you may be aware, there's a national debate right now with respect to whether there will be outlawing incandescent lights and mandating. Today, that would be largely compact fluorescents today to do that. The mercury issue is one of those issues that's being brought up. Whether that's being brought up by virtue of the incandescent bulb manufacturers or not, I really can't tell you. So we're mindful of the issue. We provide information to people with respect to the proper storage, as well as that being stated on the packages that they buy them on. On the issue of LEDs, we're monitoring LEDs. The price is kind of similar to where compact fluorescents were about, now almost a decade ago. Prices are falling. It's the same sort of thing. You got to get the volume up to get the price down. Same sort of thing that we see in photovoltaics for solar on our roofs. Prices have cut in half on some of the replacement fluorescent rods like you see on a commercial building right now. We need to get more on top of that. To be honest with you, we need to be tracking that technology and its pricing points a little closer than we are, and we're starting to do so that we can see as we go forward, should we be changing our rebate and our plans as we look at our energy efficiency programs.
Thank you. And then also one last point, Mr. Chairman. If you could look within your staff and your team, I know you got a lot of good engineers over there, maybe they could do their own research on how real or how bad the situation is with the potential for mercury in the fluorescent bulbs. There's always potential for people to overblow something or actually sweep it under the rug, depending on who the source is. But,
right.
I mean, I think we're probably big enough over there and curious enough to maybe do our own research, hopefully. Okay?
We'll look into it.
If you can let us know what you guys come up with. Thank
Okay.
you.
We'll do.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you very much. This is a note and file item, so we'll go ahead and note and file this item without objection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2, I had requested that we continue that. I have several questions on this, unless staff feels that there is a real urgency to discuss this today. Is there a real urgency to move on this today, or we could continue this to next week?
Tom Anderberry, Fleet Services, Water and Power.
Tom Patslaw, Fleet Services, Water and Power.
Number 2.
Item number 2.
Yeah, just so I'll quickly read it into record so we know. Item number 2 relates to the DWP report relative to amendment number 3 to an existing agreement with Keep It Moving Incorporated for the rental of dump trucks. Report from the Department of Water and Power and the CAO.
Can we continue this to next week? I have several questions about this whole program. Are we moving towards getting our own? This is a $6.9 million contract and total contract amount of $19 million. I've been chair of this committee several months, and I see huge contracts here, and I just want to make sure that I understand these as we continue to do these amendments to them and these large numbers. And so I just want to sit down and have a fuller, better understanding of what this is. Can we continue this for 1 week?
How soon would we be able to sit down and go over it?
Your next scheduled meeting would be June 20th?
June 20th?
Yeah.
That's 2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Okay, it will impact operations. This is a critical contract for the Department of Water and Power for both water side and power side. We have been doing without because the funding is very low on what's left. So I guess 2 weeks wouldn't make a huge difference. I would, I'd like to try to answer some of it today if possible.
So we could or we cannot wait 2 weeks?
We can.
Okay. Thank you. We'll continue this for 2 weeks. Thank you.
Okay.
Is it true that it's expiring August 15th, the contract?
It's just
August 15, 2013.
2013.
Yeah. We'll have a new controller by then and stuff. That's how
I
far
hope.
we
I have a new congressman, too.
Way sooner than that.
We'll continue this in 2 weeks, and my staff will get in touch with you and get a
Okay.
full understanding of what this is. Thank you.
All right.
Next item?
Item number 3, DWP report, CAO report relative to the issuance of up to $322 million in water system revenue bonds. A report from DWP and the CAO.
While they're getting ready, Mr. Chairman, I might suggest, since they said, it wouldn't affect operations, however, it gets a little tight, perhaps we can exercise asking the President if they could put a placeholder on the council, soon thereafter. That way, it doesn't lengthen beyond those 2 weeks too much.
We could do that, but such a large amount of contract, they shouldn't be running out of money so close to getting approval from this committee. But I get your point. I'm just making the point as well that nothing should be coming through the legislative process while they run out of money at the last minute. This should be thought of way ahead of time. So, thank you. We'll do that, and my staff will take it. Thank you, Mr. Ernest. Thank you. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay. We're here, Phil Leiber from Department of Water and Power. We're here to request authorization for a bond issuance resolution, number 4843. This would establish the maximum limit of the debt that the water system could issue in this upcoming fiscal year. And this resolution requests authorization to issue up to $322 million of bonds to fund just over half of our capital program for the next year. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Being able to fund that with bonds is critical to reduce the rate impact on our customers. So we have over $630 million of capital projects that we need to incur over the next year for the 3 programs that we have talked about in the past: our Safe Drinking Water Program, our Local Water Supply Program, and our Water System Reliability Program. The bonds that we would propose to offer are likely to range from about 20 to 35 years, and the interest cost is expected to be a very low rate, probably not more than 4%. And with your approval of this initial issuance resolution, we will begin our work on this transaction, and we would hope to issue the bonds in early August.
Thank you. A couple of quick questions is, number one, does this all of these bond proceeds, or how long is the term of these bonds? The revenue we get from this, when will we spend them? This is for 1 year expenditure only, or how long does this last?
Yeah, it's money that we would get in August, and we will spend all of it in the upcoming fiscal year. Okay.
And what specific projects will this fund next year?
Specific projects?
Yes.
Jim McDaniel, Senior Certificate.
Excuse me, CAO Olivia Seves Balalunga. If you look on page 2 of the report, I had the department provide for us a list of the entire program.
Under your report, right?
Yes.
Okay. And these are all expected to begin next year?
The expenditures are going to be next year. Some of them have already begun.
Okay, so that's 637 million on the second page. This is 322 million. So this goes to support all of these projects. So
Right,
the total
that's correct.
cost of all of these projects is 637.
Yeah, those projects include all the health projects that were being sustained by the water quality adjustment factor that was passed not too long ago in the council,
Okay.
and that would include all the health projects.
And are any of these projects at risk of not being completed should these funds not be available?
That would absolutely be the case. Yeah,
They're dependent upon these bond dollars to get completed, all of these.
Absolutely. Any money we spend on capital programs has to come from really one of two sources. It either has to be collected directly from our customers, or it could be funded with bonds and paid back over time. And we do fund our programs using a mix of those two sources. It's appropriate to use bonds to spread out these costs over many years because we're building assets that last for a long time.
Now, the proposed rate increase for water that we are discussing, do these bonds, our ability to pay back these bonds dependent upon that rate increase, or can we do it without the rate increase?
The rate increase does go to fund repayment of bond proceeds over time,
Including this one?
including this one. That's all built into the financial
Built into it.
projections, yeah. Mhm.
May I clarify that, Olivia Seves-Lunga? Initially, when I received the request from the department, they had asked for a 2-year authorization, and I suggested that they ask for a 1-year authorization to just cover what was approved by the council already, which was the water quality adjustment factor. So whatever is left of an increased request would be covered in the second year, and that's why that was not included in this one.
Okay, all right. And finally, can you briefly discuss your qualified list of bond underwriters and how the final team is selected?
So this is an initial resolution that we're asking for your approval of. This allows us to get started on the transaction. We'll come back to you with a supplemental resolution that will indicate exactly who is on the bond underwriting team. We're going to be bringing that recommendation to our board at their next June meeting. I can tell you that we have a list of potential underwriters of about 18 firms, and we're trying to spread that work as broadly as we can among that list. We are anticipating that this particular transaction would be senior managed by Siebert, Branford, and Schenck, and Wells Fargo as senior underwriters. The co-underwriters would include other firms. We're looking at De La Rosa and Company, Ramirez and Company, Citigroup, Mitsubishi, UFS Securities, and Morgan Stanley. So it'll be a broad team.
If you want a complete list, the CAO's report on page 3 includes Bank of America, Barclays, De La Rosa and Company, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Securities, Morgan Stanley and Company, RBC, Capital Markets.
All of
Siebert.
these will be working on this transaction?
All of those are on the underwriting
That's
team.
the team.
Right.
But the...
They would be selecting which of those would be on the team.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cardenas?
Question. So one of the senior underwriters, it appears, could be a California-based firm, as in Siebert, Branford, Schenck. They're California-based, aren't they?
I know they have an office here. I'm not sure they're California-based.
Yeah, they're in Oakland.
Okay.
I happen to know that.
Okay.
So, yeah. And Wells Fargo is not California-based, correct?
I believe they're Minnesota-based at this point, but they certainly have large-scale operations in California.
Yes, they always remind us of that. Okay. But I'm talking headquarters.
I don't believe they are headquartered in California anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
I have one on the Safe Drinking Water Program, $317 million, and again, Owens Lake dust mitigation. How long are we going to drag that litigation, that issue on the Owens Lake dust mitigation? It seems that millions upon millions upon millions, and it doesn't seem to ever end.
Councilman Jim McDaniel, Senior Assistant General Manager, Water System. We agree with you, and that has been the message we've received loud and clear from the council. Currently, as we've explained in the past, the phases 7A and 8, we had a stipulated agreement to complete those. Phase 8 is probably about 3/4 of the way done. Phase 7A we still have to do. We have been ordered to do Phase 9 and a preliminary order on Phase 10. We are contesting those orders and saying that enough is enough. We need to be done with this. We feel the dust has been substantially controlled in Owens Lake, and at this point we're looking at dust that's naturally occurring, and that the ratepayers of Los Angeles should not be paying for this anymore. So it will be a rather contentious litigation going forward, but we are not agreeing to just continue to do more and more going forward.
See, what I found ironic is we keep paying millions upon millions. You know what the number is that we've paid over the years? How many millions?
If you add up the cost of all the capital improvements, all the operations and maintenance, and all the replacement water that's going under the lake, it's about $1.2 billion, I think we're up to now.
$1.2 billion.
And just to put that in context, if you look at what portion of our customers' bills are going towards this compliance program, if you look at a full year's of bills, about 1 to 1.5 months of bill goes directly for this dust control. So it's a substantial number.
See, on this end, we are paying an exorbitant amount of money. On the other end, we're not charging Mammoth for the water that we own. It is illogical to think that way. So if we're paying $1.2 billion, and obviously we're the golden goose they keep on draining money from, and they don't care because they'll take it as long as they can. And on the other side, we're so kind to Mammoth, and I'm sure we're going to check to see what they charge the consumers, and I'm sure consumers are paying for their water. So
About half of what our consumers pay for water.
yeah, but they're getting it for free, so
Correct.
they're making money off of us. I mean, it's like, how foolish can we be?
That's why we are engaging them on this issue, and we'll.
I mean, you really need to. When I saw Owens Lake again, I said, my goodness, it's like a never-ending nightmare. So I'm glad you folks are up on that to do something. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, with no objection, we'll move that item. And on item number 4, we did a consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 4, we had a consent with Mr. Zani and I present with the concurrence of the other council members. Will move that item without objection. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for item number 1, just for the record, the action is to note and file.
Not file number 1, yeah.
Yeah, he said.
Perez.